everybody, it's me back again, and today I'm going to be doing something a bit different than what I've done in the past. Today, I had this idea the other night to sit down with some of these 3D movies that I have and talk about them, the story and the 3D and how it works. And today, that's what we're gonna do. And as you can see here, we're gonna be watching Coraline. And this is one of the best 3D movies of all time, in my opinion. They really built this movie from the ground up to be in 3D. Just a little bit of backstory. I believe Coraline is from director Henry Selick, and you may recognize that name because he also was the director for The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I also have. It's over in my crate. I have this massive crate of 3D Blu-rays. I'll probably throw a picture up on the screen right here. And I think this is a good way to kind of utilize my time, so I'm at least doing something other than playing World of Warcraft all day in preparation for the exciting new Burning Crusade expansion. Anyway, we're gonna get started. So one of the things about this movie is that this movie is a stop-motion animated film. For those of you who don't know, from Leica Studios. They make excellent stuff. They really do rival Aardman when it comes to stop motion. And this movie was shot in 3D. They actually took both the left eye and right eye picture with the single camera. They would take a picture, move it slightly to the left or to the right. They would take a picture, move it slightly left or to the right, and then they would put that together to make a 3D image. It's quite remarkable, and they also filmed Paranorman in this way. And speaking of Aardman, they also filmed the Pirates Band of Misfits like this. Cool stuff. And something interesting I found out the other night is that I had a 3D video on, and I could see the reflection of the video in 3D in the window. There's a reflection of the video in the window. But this intro is really good. It sets up the story, obviously, the intrigue, the mystery behind the other mother, and sets up the Coraline doll we see later in the film. So the 3D in this opening sequence is very intense. There's a lot of depth and volume in the characters and the action events happening on screen. This is a nice bit of negative parallax. The little needle feels like it's coming right out into your face. And nice bit of extreme depth there with the Coraline doll floating into the screen. Now, this movie was designed from the ground up to be in 3D, and the shots and the time we spend in the real world, the colors and everything are very muted, but the 3D is also very flat. There doesn't appear to be much distance between the Pink Palace apartment sign and the Pink Palace itself in the background. Not much volume here. In fact, this shot looks like it's just completely flat. There's just teeny tiny bit of depth in these shots here. But you really gotta be looking for it. This is the introduction to Coraline, the character herself. Voiced by Dakota Fanning, did an excellent job. So all these shots here, they're very flat. They're just about as flat as they could get it without it just not having any 3D depth at all. Alright, here we get a little bit more 3D depth as we're introduced to YB. Not too much more, but this is a bit more. That's a really cool transition. You notice all the seed packets she put on the windowsill are the same plants that are in the garden later on. Here comes the meme. You winning, Dad? So yeah, we're being introduced to her parents here. They don't really, they're busybodies. They're busy with their work. They're married to their jobs, and they just kind of brush her off. Now, one thing to take note of is when I say they built this from the ground up to be in 3D, I mean they literally built it that way. The set design in the real world is designed in a way to make the world look flatter or more shallower than it is. If there's a few good shots that show this off, particularly the kitchen. If we can get one of those shots coming up, I'll point it out. They're really good at hiding the way that they built the sets. It's a forced perspective. Alright, so we're getting ready to get some more cool 3D in this shot. Check it out, they're about to ramp up that depth. So we have a nice bit of negative parallax with the mice here coming out from the other world. And that's a nice little story beat there, because they're coming out from this other world into our world, or into the real world, and that's just a nice little 3D trick. Alright, so this is a really cool bit of 3D. As the tunnel extends off into the background, the depth and volume increases. So what they're doing here is they have a very small interaxial, very teeny, I can't even put my hands close enough together for it, especially since the interaxials in general had to be small because of the puppets. But they're like very small, and then as the tunnel expands, they're moving those cameras farther and farther apart. It's really inviting the viewer, the audience, into this other world. Really, really cool effect. So it genuinely feels like you're sitting in this tunnel crawling through it with Coraline. And as we go into this other world, we see that all the depth and volume in these rooms. The 3D is very poppy here. And subconsciously, as an audience, we're enjoying this world too. Outside of the colors and the animation is much more vibrant, and the lighting is brighter in these scenes. Nice bit of negative parallax right there. The hands reaching out for the audience. It's a nice bit of a nice storytelling beat there. He's being controlled by the hands, but the hands are also reaching out towards Coraline as like a foreshadowing thing. There's a lot of depth here. It's just amazing how they did this. Especially this camera move that's getting ready to come up here with the train. Just amazing how they move the camera through like that. It really feels like you're flying through the tunnel there. What a flex. They just have like a train on their table. Oh, that's nice foreshadowing for the end. Or like a nice little setup for the other mother's penchant for games. You see the claw and the lightning shot. Or you see the claw and the lightning bolt. When she goes to sleep, it'll be a good way to show the difference between the fake world set and the real world set. Now, I feel like this is a subtle reference to Harry Potter for some reason. You have the moving photograph, and you have two characters that look like they could be caricatures of Ron and Hermione, but maybe I'm just nuts. They're going to transition back into the real world. You can't really see it all that good on the camera, but if you're watching the movie again, just take notice of the way the proportions are. Particularly, there's a tote at the end of Coraline's bed. And the way the tote is made, you can tell that it's not completely straight. You can feel that the angles are off and that it's a bit squished on the farther side of it. And all of this was done in an attempt to really flatten the real world to make it less interesting. As the movie progresses, the 3D really represents excitement and something new and something fantastical. But as it gets closer to the end, it starts representing something intense and sinister. Like I said, people always talk about Avatar is the greatest 3D movie ever. And the 3D in that movie is very excellent. But I think Coraline just did it way better, in my opinion. And it came out in the same year, 2009. One of the more prevalent complaints about 3D is that people complain that it wasn't consistent throughout the film. The reason for that is because the storytellers are using it to help tell the story. Not everything's going to be coming out of the screen, or the screen isn't always, sets aren't always going to feel like they're way back into the screen in positive space. It's all part of the storytelling process. Now you can kind of tell here the set does feel sloped upwards. Just the table you can kind of tell is stretched flat. It's more oval than it is round. It's very subtle. You have to really be looking for it, but it is there. Now we're getting ready to meet the rest of the people living in the Pink Palace. And once again, now that we're in the real world, everything is very flat. Colors are muted, so on and so forth. One of the great things about Leica Studios is they're not afraid to be really macabre and a bit disturbing at times. And this movie definitely is probably their most intense. Their other films have intense moments in them, but this one for certain, they definitely really went all out on it. I like how even though the camera only has one lens, it's still taking 3D pictures. So we're getting ready to take our second trip. They once again do the trick with the expanding interaxial down the hallway, or the little tunnel there. As you can see here, you can tell that this kitchen set's very, well, the floor is like flat. It's not sloped up. Nothing's being compressed to make the 3D look less enticing, or the world itself less enticing. Got some nice negative parallax there with the little humming bee bird things. There we go, little frog out in negative space. I just want to take a moment to say the soundtrack in this movie is unbelievable. Just absolutely fantastic. Now that we're back into the fake world, there's more 3D depth once again, increasing that interaxial. This is a nice tracking shot behind the mouse. Then Mr. Bobinski kneeling down out into the audience. Oh, I just noticed up there in the corner it says 1984 Best Uniforms. It's a little nod towards the book. Also kind of continuing that idea that this is really lame. Coraline hates it. She feels restricted. There's a surprising bit of depth there with their argument, but Coraline was definitely out in some negative space there. Really, pushing the fact that she's pulling away from her parents now, and she's putting as much distance between her and her mom as she can. Alright, here you can really tell about the room. And it's kind of hard to see on the video, but you can definitely tell that the floor is sloped. The dimensions on the counters and everything are squashed. It's the little things, but it really adds up. And subconsciously, it's flat. I want to go back to the other world. The audience watching this is thinking this is just like her. We're seeing the world how she's seeing it. We're feeling it how she's feeling it. As the audience member, you do want to go back to the other world because it's so exciting, and you're like, the 3D's so good there, and I want to see all that stuff. Get that depth increase once again. We're about to head into the play scene with a bit of circus acrobatics, and we're about to see some more of this film's excellent 3D. They're already ramping it up here. You can see the rows and the rows of dogs. The theater is just so massive. You really get a sense of scale here. It's almost dizzying, which I think was kind of the intention. I think that was everyone's reaction to seeing this. I wonder how close this movie got to a PG-13 rating. Now this section's really excellent in 3D. And one thing 3D is really good at is scale. And once they grab Coraline, she's flying around the theater. You really do feel how high up they are. She's coming out in the negative space. Really, really cool shot there. Really do get the feeling of how high up she is. And by increasing the depth here, you really do get a lot of mileage out of your set because you make it feel larger than it actually is. That's one of the great things about, the camera and the settings that you have there while taking the images does that as well. But 3D can really help give a sense of placement. And VFX tend to blend better into live action with 3D as well. The 3 candles, the 3 portraits in the back representing the 3 children she's already taken. You notice here at the that one shot, there wasn't very much depth there. But this is kind of the point in the movie where the intense depth and 3D is starting to signify something not so great. It no longer signifies fun or excitement. But I mean, you can ascribe, you know, different depths to whatever emotion you want to get across. Excitement or fear or whatever, just intense emotions. But she's still in the other world, and the 3D still kind of represents that. And it's brilliant. I mean, outside of the set design, the 3D being the way that it is also is an indicator that she hasn't left the fake world. More intense, macabre 3D. That shot is reminiscent of the earlier in the film, was very shallow, but now you can see it in all its deep glory. You aren't my mother. Apologize. It's getting really intense. The characters are getting into your face. They're coming out in negative parallax. And they're about to amp up the 3D in just a moment. Right here, as she's turning into the more spider-like version of herself. Now, this upcoming is my favorite shot in the whole movie. Here we are. You may come out when you've learned to be a loving daughter. That's the best shot for me, personally. She's obviously getting up into Coraline's face, and as an audience member, when you see it in 3D, she's in negative parallax. She is literally coming out of the screen into your face, you know, pointing her finger at you, and there's more of a connection to what Coraline is going through in that moment. They do some interesting stuff with the 3D on these characters. As they move around, their volume is really inconsistent. And I feel like that was something intentionally done to really push the otherworldliness of these characters. Just to give them a little bit more of a macabre feel. As though they're in this world and they're not at the same time. Why be literally reaching out to the audience to grab them and pull them out? Yeah, now we're back into the real world and all the depth and everything's gone away. It's very flat. But it's kind of a nice rest for the audience's eyes as well from all the intense 3D. You can see the wall here, the way that it's like sloped upwards. It's part of the set design to make the room look shallower than it is. It's a really nice shot. The cat, there's not a lot of depth in these real world shots, but even still, the cat being in negative parallax like that is, it's kind of like a jolt, like, you know, she wakes up and the first thing she sees is this cat right in her face, and 3D composition reflects that, even with the limited depth budget. They ramp up the intensity in those last 2 shots, the key and then her, because she knows she's got to go back through the door. It's like really flat and they pull that interaxial out, make it really intense. Dad's a squash, and if you remember earlier in the film, she had a little squash packet on the kitchen windowsill. Extends her hand out to the audience. Nice bit of negative parallax as the hand gets pulled back into the screen underneath the water there. Nice bit of negative parallax there for a scare. 3D is really good for jump scares as well. More than just a jolt in the visuals and the audio, but a jolt in how your eyes are converging on the screen adds a little bit more of an oomph to that scare. And there's another movie, I think maybe the next one that I'll look at, that uses 3D in that manner. That's considered to be one of the best 3D movies of all time. And I've got a lot to say about that one too. And it's really cool to see these sets with all this depth and everything. You get I guess it helps with the 3D presentation better, that you know what they look like with very little depth versus a lot of depth, and you have that. Oh, here we go. Offering to the audience. Nice. Here's another good bit of negative parallax. But yeah, it helps you appreciate the 3D more, knowing what it looks like without all the depth, and you have a nice something to compare it to, I guess. Alright, this is like the creepiest part in the whole movie. Bam, another jump scare with the negative parallax. Really intense. As her search goes on, they're really driving up that 3D. The pressure's on, and now she's about to get blasted by all these cannons. Lots of fun things popping at you there. And really exaggerating the 3D, just it adds to how uncomfortable the situation is, I guess. It feels unnatural, because we know that it obviously is hyper stereo, but when it's like, it feels stretched and exaggerated, it adds to the unsettling nature of the film. And obviously the FOV does that too in 2D, but in 3D it's much easier to get that idea across. This is really cool for 3D, all the little bits and particles falling from the sky. Intense bit of 3D there. They really pulled out all the stops for this climax finale here. Nice bit of negative parallax there. The cat scratching towards the audience. This is the most depth out of everything in the film. They said they increased the interaxial to the highest that they were comfortable with doing, just to keep pushing the intensity up on this scene. It also helps because there's not really anything there. It's just like you're kind of a white void, so they were able to get away with this a little bit more than if it was in an actual room. There she is, popping out negative parallax, really getting up in your face. It's like one of those things where you might not have noticed it, but your brain did. The tunnel's getting closer and closer. They're decreasing that depth there as it gets closer, and bam. Back in the real world. It's all flat. It's kind of a welcome flatness, I guess, from the intensity of what we just seen. And like I said, gives the audience a chance to rest their eyes. This shot once again in the real world. And this one as well, mirroring the last time that she tried to, or when she was trying to escape from the other world. And these white petals here, kind of representing the world, the other world flaking apart as she's bringing this key towards the well here. That's Coraline. This is an excellent movie. I mean, even watching it again, I've seen it so many times. I remember when I found this at the Best Buy, I was like, this is an immediate get. Now, I hadn't seen this movie in theaters. The first time I saw it in 3D was when I picked up this Blu-ray, and I was really impressed with it. And every time I see it, I'm just like, wow, they really went all out. We go ahead and mute that. But yeah, if you have a 3D TV or a setup, or even a VR headset, if you have a PlayStation 4 and you put a 3D movie in and you have a PlayStation VR headset, you can actually watch the movie in 3D in that. But if you got a 3D TV or any way to watch 3D Blu-rays, Coraline definitely right there at the top of the list for movies. And if you got, if you've got friends that are like, 3D ain't shit, just show them this one, and maybe explain to them a little bit about how they're using 3D as an artistic storytelling thing. But with that being said, I want to thank you guys for checking this video out, and maybe I'll do more of these in the future if I like how this came out. Yeah, you guys have a great day. Hopefully I actually end up editing this and not playing World of Warcraft. I'm getting distracted.